Good afternoon and welcome to the Caribbean American Forum. I'm your host, Rickford Burke. Joining me now is Kirsten Foy, who is a youth activist in Brooklyn, as well as a senior aide to the New York City Public Advocate Bill de Blasio, and assistant to Reverend Al Sharpton of the National Action Network. And to my right is Walter Mosley. He's an attorney at law, graduate of Howard University, and a former aide to the New York State Senate Democratic Conference. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kirsten, I'll start with you. You became very popular last year. Infamous is a better word. Last year, Labor Day, when yourself and City Council member Jamani Williams, you guys were arrested by police for attempting to walk back, having marched with the masqueraders down to the museum, attempting to walk back, to the square, to the roundabout. Grand Army Plaza. And you were attempting to walk back to the museum when you guys were arrested by police. What was that experience like?
It was a unique experience for me in that not the necessarily, unfortunately, the negativity associated with that experience with the police officers, but it was new in that it demonstrated a whole nother level of hubris and brashness on the part of the NYPD. I mean, here we are, New York City Council member, myself, high-ranking aide to the number 2 guy in the city, and we had been given permission by a police captain to walk into a so-called frozen zone to be able to double back and go to a luncheon that we had both been invited to. When an officer with a whole lot of chutzpah, for lack of a better word, decided that he wasn't going to respect the decision of a higher-ranking officer, a white shirt. He wasn't going to respect Councilmember Williams' position. He wasn't going to respect mine. He wasn't going to respect our identification, nor our credentials. He was going to make a statement. And unfortunately, he and his commanding officers all agreed to make that unfortunate statement at that time, at that place, with us 2 individuals. So it was a unique experience.
And I know the police commissioner had an investigation done. What was the outcome of that investigation?
Well, the officers, there were 4 officers who had been charged with the internal affairs investigation and subsequent civilian complaint review board investigation. 3 of the 4 officers had the charges partially substantiated. I'm sorry. The full complaint was partially substantiated because one of the officers who was charged and investigated had been subsequently excused from his role and participation. But 3 of the 4 officers were disciplined, did receive command discipline.
What was that?
A command discipline is a note on your record.
Okay.
You know, it's
just a memo in the file that they arrested Kirsten Foy and Jamani Williams.
Right, wrongfully. It's a note in the file. The interesting thing is that a high-ranking deputy inspector got a command discipline. And that is highly unusual for a commanding officer to receive a reprimand from the commissioner. The officer who assaulted me, threw me to the ground, received command discipline and lost some vacation days, 5 vacation days. So there was some measure of discipline meted out, but certainly not to the full extent to which I think was deserved, nor do the hundreds of thousands of other young Black and Latino men who go through this on a routine basis. This did not speak to their issue of justice.
Before I go to Walter, I want to ask you this. You're now going to run for the New York City Council, and later on we'll talk about your motivation. I hope this was one of the factors that motivated you to run for office. But I have been saying, and I've asked a senator who agreed with me on a radio program last week, that somehow or the other, I think we need to write into our laws, or we need to strengthen our laws in New York State to make sure that police officers behave a certain way. And when they don't, we don't leave it to the discretion of like the police commissioner or the department to institute disciplinary action. We want to make sure that the laws mandate certain types of action. Do you think that's something that's necessary? And as if you were elected to the city council, would you join Councilmember Williams in fighting for these, if not revisions in state law, in the city charter or city statute?
Absolutely. I think not only the pieces of legislation that Councilmember Williams has sponsored and introduced, but there are a whole host of legislative packages on the local level, the state level, and indeed the federal level that I think are critical in terms of creating some measure of accountability for the NYPD. You know, the New York City Police Department is the largest police force in the country. If it were a standalone army, it would be the 7th largest army in the world. It is the most equipped police force in the world, and it is, relatively speaking, one of the best trained police forces in the world. It is certainly has the single largest budget of any law enforcement agency on a local level in our country, and comparable to some state agencies as well. But it is the only agency in the city of New York that does not have an inspector general. It does not have the level of accountability that many of us in the activist community and inside government believe it should have. We don't have an inspector general. The Civilian Complaint Review Board just now was given full authority to prosecute officers, where before they had not had that full authority. The NYPD actually maintained the authority to prosecute its own officers for violation of its own policy. So there was really there still is no real mechanism on the city level of accountability for the NYPD. And if we're going to move progressively into a future where all of the citizens feel like they play a vital, equal role in contributing to our city, then we have to have a police department that's accountable to all of the citizens. And we don't have that right now.
Well said. What's your motivating factor? What are the motivating factors for you deciding to run in the 36th Councilmatic District?
Well, politics is one avenue I think we all can agree in which we can make critical social change and contributions as an individual. I have spent my whole adult life as an activist in electoral politics, and I've fought on the outside, I've fought on the inside. Going actually into the position of an elected official would be, I think, a natural extension of that work. I think you can affect real change from a legislative body. I think you can provide real leadership from a legislative body. I think you can inspire others to real leadership and activism from that position. So it is a platform by which we can move a progressive agenda. It's a platform by which we can fight for those things that we hold dear, and it's a platform for motivating others to come and get in the process. So that's what really is intriguing about taking public service and community service to the next natural level.
And Mr. Mosley, you have been an aide to some senior Democratic politicians in Albany at the state level, particularly Senator Sampson, as well as the Democratic Conference in the Senate. What has motivated you to seek elective office, and what are some of the main agenda items you wish to see implemented, if you're elected, that have not been implemented or even addressed so far in our community?
Well, first of all, thank you, Rick, for having me. Thank Caribbean American Forum for having me. I'm going to say probably the one thing that motivated me, having grown up in Brooklyn, having seen such stalwarts as Congressman Ed Towns and Al Vann fight the good fight, whether it's in Washington or whether it's in City Hall, or whether it's at Albany, is that we all know that there is a subsequent generation that has to follow them, that has to take what they've done and elevate, and as a result, not only take that to another level, as my colleague has said, but also to address some of the certain issues with a new perspective, using the new tools that are available to us, while at the same time meeting some of the common concerns and issues that are relevant to all of us as Brooklynites and as New Yorkers and as Americans. To me, some of the concerns that are pervasive, not only in my district, but probably throughout most New York City neighborhoods, is probably has to deal with housing, which is a very intricate and detailed issue that we not only have to recognize and address, but how are we going to deal with creating affordable housing, preserving affordable housing? What are the resources that are available to us both at the state, federal, and city level? Dealing with mayoral control as it relates to public education and how that has impacted the public lives of our students and their ability to get a quality public education. And dealing with that from a statewide, how do we now look at and revisit the issue of mayoral control? So right now, what we're doing is looking at those two issues. Obviously, we're dealing with the job issue, making sure that we have fair and equitable development, as well as job placement for minority and women-owned businesses, as well as a diverse workforce that's reflective of our diverse communities. And then last but not least, dealing with the hospital issues and the healthcare concerns that are prevalent throughout central Brooklyn in particular as it relates to Affordable Care Act, and what we believe will happen in late June with the Supreme Court's decision to determine the constitutionality of Obamacare, dealing with the hospital mergers, and then last but not least, also dealing with the issue of how do we deal with inpatient, outpatient psychiatric care, particularly as it relates to Kings County Psychiatric Center and its ability to preserve itself and to be a most efficient healthcare facility.
Well, that's an impressive policy agenda. Now, I want to come back and address the issue that I spoke about with Kirsten, because I think throughout our community, if you talk to young black men, the number one issue that they complain about is police abuse, and I'm pretty sure you get those complaints as well. How do we foster a better relationship between the black community and police, and how do you think we could promote better police accountability and a better police relations, even the protection of the civil liberties of minorities? How could we actually, through the legislature, enhance this process?
Well, I think this is something that a lot of us are talking about, and I think it starts at the top. It starts from the One Police Plaza. It starts at City Hall. The culture that they create in their office, in their respective offices, whether it's in City Hall or whether it's One Police Plaza, and going forward from there. But to me, I think it's a much larger issue. Obviously, stop and frisk is a very chic issue. It's something that everyone is talking about, everyone's addressing. But there are other pervasive issues throughout the police department. How do we, how are these special forces and special units are created, and what are the mandatory requirements to qualify to serve in these units? How do we deal with the policing of our schools? Right now the NYPD has control over how do we police our schools and our school safeties. So to me, and I think what is necessary, because now we're starting to see a progressive view in terms of the Congress taking forward and taking action, and particularly here in New York City, if we continue to move forward, I would like for our congressional members, with the assistance of the legislatures and municipal city elected officials, is that we push the Eric Holder Department, Justice Department, and say, let's get a pattern and practice inquiry on the NYPD. If it could be done in Los Angeles, it can be done in Detroit, it can be done in the state of Maryland, but let's look at the bigger picture. And I understand that this is a very hot topic.